Hello, everybody. Today we're taking a closer look at Emperor of China, and this is an obscure old school area controller published by Dynamic Games way back in 1972. It's one of the few games I own that's even older than me. You might be thinking, why Emperor of China? What makes it worth modding? Why should anyone take a second look at this old title? Well, I always say, why not? With this video, I hope to demonstrate how anyone can, with a little effort and imagination, resurrect interest in any old game. And in this case, I use Emperor of China as an example. By the way, the unmodified game isn't terrible. It's rated 6.1 out of 10 on BGG. With mods, I say it can be higher than that. Is it dated? Yes, absolutely. Hindered by 1970s era crummy components? No doubt. However, we can adjust and or upgrade all that stuff fairly easily. And there is another plus side. It's extremely cheap on today's secondary market. The shipping will cost you more than the game itself, and that's if you want to build off original components like I did. On the other hand, you could also print and play from scratch, as all pertinent information about it may be found online. I view my personal modified copy as an homage to a forgotten game company that, went out of business 50 years ago. It's nothing I would ever try to resell or even trade. Anyway, before we consider mods and adjustments, let's take a minute to look in the box and explain how Emperor of China works. The first thing you notice is the map. It's the best part of the whole game, actually. You get to fight over ancient China with terrain limitations. It's not a common setup or setting for this type of game. The whole thing has a very interesting thematic look to it that draws you in somehow. Anyway, here's how the game works in a nutshell. Think Hasbro's Risk, although light. It's 2 to 5 players, but there are a few ways to win. Hold 15 provinces at the end of a turn, or eliminate all opposition, or score the most points after all the cards run out. More on the card play later. You get 2 points per province, 2 points per agriculture marker, and a single point scores for mines and cities, as well as for individual army units left on the board at the end of the game. And this will all become clear after I take a minute to cover the setup, turn sequence, and combat. It's all simple and straightforward. Players randomly determine turn order, and then each player takes the following steps on a turn. First, gain 3 units and claim an empty territory. Second, you move. You have unlimited movement across friendly occupied spaces, but you will skip this step for the first portion of the game until the map is thoroughly populated. Third, colonize empty territories with the following restrictions. You can never enter any empty space with less than 3 units, and furthermore, no territory can ever hold more than 10 units total. So those are interesting restrictions that you always have to consider. Step 4, you draw 1 yin card and 1 yang card and apply the effects. Yin is basically bad news, and it applies immediately. The yang cards are positive events that can be banked. For example, a yin card may say something like a flood occurs, lose 1 or 2 units. A yang card may say place a mine, city, or agriculture token in a province. These sites add bonus reinforcements in specific territories at the beginning of your turn, beyond the base 3 units you get to place anywhere at the start of every turn. In addition, most of the yang cards act as coupons that allow for attacks across difficult terrain, such as mountains, rivers, or the Great Wall. Without them, you can't invade provinces behind either man-made or natural barriers, or sail across the sea. Step 5, you can probably guess, is the combat phase. It's ridiculously simple for the most part. 1d6 rolls resolve combat. Only the attacker rolls, and attacking is always a 50-50 proposition. There are a few unique twists, though. Attacks can be divided into multiple rounds. If the attacker has 6 units attacking a spot, for example, they don't have to roll all 6 dice at once. They can go one at a time instead. This would be more cautious of an approach. However, if you do this, the defender can withdraw to an adjacent friendly occupied territory between attack rounds. And this might be across a river or a mountain, so that's different and a pretty cool variable. And lastly, units being in supply matters in this game. So if you completely surround an empty territory, it becomes yours. If you surround an enemy occupied territory, they get 1 opportunity to break out on their next turn. If they fail to do so, they are dead, and control of the surrounded territory flips to the opposition. This situation, by the way, is kind of a liberal interpretation of the rules, a slight rules mod, if you like, because this game has some issues that go beyond just crappy components. So let's discuss the mods and potential game adjustments. First, the rules. They are printed on this thing, which is 6 or so pages of tightly spaced text on colored paper that actually hurt my eyeballs to look at. And I've never had that before. The format is ugly and it gave me a headache to plow through it. The writing, the explanations at times seem really awkward and clumsy. So I suggest if you get this game, read the official rules only one time. With an open laptop or whatever, just transcribe the relevant stuff critical to actual gameplay, then cut and paste and reorganize your bullet points into a rule summary that makes sense to you, and you'll get something easier to follow that looks like this. This is the rule summary I use. I always do this, but for this game, it's essential, since the material it comes with does such a poor job of presenting the rules. Mod number 2. I add to the plastic unit pawns that come with the game. The unit markers themselves are comparable in quality to wood cubes, I suppose. So they are functional, but I wanted soldiers too. So I went shopping online for some proper army dudes. I went with 1/72 scale plastic minis from the Hobby Bunker, Caesar miniatures. The box looks like this. They're really good, I think. $13 for 42 of them. I put colored strips on their bases so I didn't have to paint them. They don't look as sharp that way, but it means I can repurpose them more easily for different games if the need arises. I keep my minis versatile, more value for the dollar that way. Anyway, so the way I use them is to have one per territory, like a general, I guess, and any number over one, I just fill out with pawns. The map doesn't get too crowded that way, but it still looks way cooler with soldiers standing on. Mod number 3, the yin and yang cards. These are nothing more than colored construction paper. They are not even worth sleeving or laminating, in my opinion. Typical 1970s trash by today's standards. So I made my own. I found examples of beautiful ancient Chinese artwork online that matched the theme and subject matter of the cards, dropped the images into a basic paint program and printed them off. And yeah, I just went crazy. I had a lot of fun doing this actually. Chinese culture has stunning artwork that depicts all aspects of life: city construction, floods, battles, even traders, intrigue, and sabotage. That's one of the yin cards that wipes out a player's banked yang cards, by the way. I find that if you use beautified custom cards with Emperor of China, it really goes a long way to improving the immersion factor of the game. Modification number 4. You can easily enhance the city, agriculture, and mine tokens with stock images glued to the surface of the plain plastic discs that come with the game. I also made mine thicker, easier to pick up. And I also added some additional distinct red chips to mark surrounded provinces, since the game doesn't come with anything for that purpose. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is modification number 5. And this is a multifaceted step because it involves altering the map with the aim of enhancing the combat system. So I think one of the reasons why combat is so basic in this game is because the map, although interesting and attractive, is actually quite ambiguous and sloppy in certain areas. You have mountain ranges and rivers wandering all over the place. Even the Great Wall doesn't always line up precisely with territorial boundaries. And this is a significant problem that I believe muddies up conflict resolution. The rules acknowledge this. At one point, they say something to the effect of a mountain range is only considered a barrier between two contested areas where a clear majority of a border is covered by mountains. So unless you want to waste a lot of time debating back and forth over what is and what is not a clear majority of river flow or a mountain range across any boundary, you got to modify the map. And luckily, about 15 years ago, a BGG user named Autumnweave uploaded a high quality map scan from this game. And what a huge, huge difference maker it was. Why? Because it means you can download the image and drop it into a paint program and easily adjust it any way you like and then print it out in sections. This is how I made my copy more playable and more conducive to revised combat rules. So here's what I did. First, I cleaned up some sloppy territory borders that left some dead spaces on the map. I made the Great Wall more noticeable and synced it up more closely with territory borders. I deleted some rivers. I moved some mountain ranges around to remove any doubt about their locations. I repurposed the yin and yang card holding boxes. I don't see why cards have to be sitting directly on the map during gameplay. The top box became a legend for the various map features I added. You can see I also added color-coded arrows all over the map to remove any doubt about what kind of modifiers apply when attacking across all the terrain. River penalties, mountain, amphibious, Great Wall modifiers are all covered. I made Taiwan a more valuable space. In my game, it is adjacent to every other shore territory. It's the only island in the game, so I say it can only be isolated if the entire shore falls into enemy hands. And finally, you'll notice the lower box reveals the adjustments I make to combat. The main reason I chose to mod this aspect of the game is because I totally agree with the most common criticism of it that you're probably going to find online. And that is only a handful of Yang cards permit attacks across difficult terrain. And this is a total bummer. It simply feels too restrictive. So I say, why not make any attack possible? Just apply significant penalties across terrain and then have a few special cards alleviate said penalties. The game plays more like History of the World this way. A fantastic game, by the way, if you haven't played that one. Anyway, to better facilitate this revised combat system, I lost the cheap D6s that came in the box, and I went with a basic combat resolution table that uses D8s instead. It's still simple, as you can see. Open terrain, 50-50 proposition. Across mountain, you need a 6 to 8 on a D8. River and shore, same thing, except the attacker can't retreat. And the wall is the hardest, 7 to 8 on a D8 to hit a defender, otherwise the attacker loses a unit. The terrain penalties are cumulative in certain cases too. In some spots, you would need both a river advantage and mountain advantage card to attack at even odds. My terrain advantage cards also give the attacker one re-roll during combat, but the cards are good for just one attack in case you're wondering, so single usage. Here's what the revised map looks like next to the original, and just in case you're wondering. So not that different really, just more user-friendly, I suppose. For gameplay tips, I would say the best one I can think of is don't be afraid to try this two-player. It's really fun this way, actually, if you apply the following rule set. Have each player control 2 allied colors with an alternating turn order sequence, and also alternating control of a 5th mercenary power. An example would be round 1, player 1, red, goes, and then player 2, black, and then player 1, yellow, and then player 2, green, and then player 1 would control the white mercenary army. Round 2 would be the same thing, but after player 2, green, player 2 would then control the mercenary army. So you flip control of the mercenary power back and forth between rounds. Also restrict the mercenaries to just 1 attack per round. So the cool thing about this two-player game is that you're trying to get to 15 territories with a 2-color alliance before the cards run out. Additionally, mercenary armies count towards your goal on those rounds that they are under your control. So you really have to plan things carefully. On certain turns, mercenaries will definitely be more useful to you alive rather than dead. It becomes an interesting matter of timing. So hopefully after watching this video, you'll someday consider trying this game. It's cheap to own, it's quirky, and quite rare to see these days, but still fast and fun, different, interesting, and most importantly, super easy to modify or upgrade to your own liking. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content coming soon.